Hello again. Okay, for this video what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start doing some carpentry, believe it or not. As I've said before, carpentry isn't something that I've done a lot of, and I'm going to have a go at some rough cabinetry. I'm going to make up 4 carcasses, and then I'm going to make and fit drawers into them just to go under my workbench. Then I'm hoping that if I do that I can get rid of this monstrosity, which is actually a piece of furniture my wife salvaged to go in the house, so she can have that back, and all my stuff in the drawers can go under my bench, make a lot more space in the workshop for various machinery. The joinery I'm going to do doesn't have to be very accurate, and for me this exercise is more about learning how to use my plane thicknesser to get straight edges, and how to use a table saw to cut down sheet sizes. The table saw that I've got at the moment is a Clark 10-inch job. It's not very accurate at all. I'm going to be replacing it with an Axminster one over the next month or so, but it should do the job well enough for these carcasses. I'm also going to be using a doweling jig, a Wolfcraft doweling jig. I've never used that before. I'm going to dowel the carcasses together. So that's something else that I've got to learn how to do. Looking forward to the whole project really. It should be fun. So onwards. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I've got this project's all going to be made out of reclaimed stuff. Well, apart from the drawer linings, because I haven't got enough sheet material to do all of the bottoms, so I'll have to buy the plywood for that. These are old shelves that I'm going to reuse for the carcasses. So I'm going to plane up the one edge, and then I'm going to run it through the saw to get it to size. Then I'll plane up the other edge, so it's all nice and square, hopefully, and then I'll size it up. I can get 2 sides out of one sheet, about 600 deep. That's not quite as deep as my bench, but it's deep enough for this. As far as I'm concerned, the drawer runners can hang over the back. So I'm going to run it all through the planer.
So I collected my work and I started to put it through the machine and realised I hadn't set the fence square. I got myself a set square and set it all up nice and square to the table and started to put the work through. Only when I put in the work through I realised that I hadn't left enough clearance at the end of the machine to actually pass the work all the way through. That sorted out, I then machined the rest. If I were to do this again, I'd have got a large piece of board and clamped it to the existing fence, something about 12 inches high and a little bit longer the fence, just to support the work a little bit more and enable me to get a really straight edge.
Okay, so that's given me a flat edge on one edge of the boards that I want to use. Obviously I'm short of room. I need to make casters for all of this machinery so I can push it around and get the piece that I'm actually using in the centre of the workshop each time. I wish I had a workshop twice the size. Hey, don't we all? Next on the agenda is to actually run them through the circular saw to get them to the width that I need. So I'll get that set up and onwards. I've set the fence to 402mm. I want to finish them at 400, but I shall plane the edge off for the last bit, just for practice using the planer more than anything. Fence is really bad, so I've had to square it up myself and then put a G-clamp on to hold of it. So now all I need to do is run all the wood through it. Oh, I need to make myself some room at the back, obviously, to run the timber through, so I'll have to move the planer. Okay, so the saw's set up. Let's run the bits of wood through it.
When I was editing this, The bit that surprised me most about this is that you'll notice during the next cut the atmosphere in the workshop really starts to fog up with dust. I have a small dust filtration system in the apex, but it's not man enough for this. I really do need to get some extraction sorted out, and I should be wearing a mask. Well, all the cutting's done. I'm just squaring off the edges. They were already square, but I wanted to practice with my planer thicknesser, so I took the final couple of mil off this way.
Okay, well hopefully these are now all the same depth, but as I've said, I'm not exactly the most experienced carpenter in the world, so I'm not holding my breath. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. I even impressed myself. Okay, so I will need to square up these edges and then cut them down the middle. So I'm going to set up the chop saw to do that. Problem being, the depth of the chop saw isn't actually deep enough to do the cut in one, so I'm going to have to flip the board. Not ideal, I know. The only other way I could do it would be to set up a clamp and run the circular saw down it. I'll have a think. Okay, one thing I've noticed by measuring these boards, even though they're at the original manufacturer's width, they're out as much as 5mm between them. So what I've decided to do is cut each one down the centre on my chop saw, and then cut them all to the same length once I've done that. Seems like the best way around for me. So I'm going to set the chop saw up. I'm going to have to cut them, reverse them, then cut them again because it won't do the cut in one, and get back to you with that shortly. Again, if there are other ways of doing this that you can let me know, please put in the comments below how you might do it with basic equipment. All I've got is what you can see. I do have one of these that's Pro Clamp, which I can clamp across and run a hand circular saw down. Don't know, seems like the chop saw seems to be an easier way of doing that. Maybe you've got other ideas. I'll set that up, get back to you. Okay, so that's all that set up. So I'm going to mark all these boards in half, and then cut them, and then I'll cut the pieces down to also at the same width. Let's get on with it.
Now what I did here was I cut all the boards in half, having squared up one of the ends already. Then I measured them and lined them all up and had to trim them all so that they came to be the same width. Bit of a long-winded process, and I was quite shocked at how manufacturers' boards differed in length.
I've cut all the sides to the four carcasses that I want to make. I don't have enough material to do solid tops and bottoms, so I'm going to cut some strips about 110mm wide, forward and back, top and bottom, and I'm going to dowel them and put them into place and make the carcasses up that way. The bench will hold them square and I'll fix them to the walls and whatnot, so I'm not overly bothered about not having solid tops and bottoms. So I've got some longer bits of plywood that again are old shelves. I'm going to plane an edge up on them, then I'm going to cut them into the necessary strips. I've made myself a temporary fence for the saw that I'm using. It's not very accurate. That's the best way I can do it, and then I'll trim them all to length on the chop saw. So onwards.
Right, I'm going to take the manufactured boards now, which are 1220 wide, and cut them to 800mm long, which is the length that I want. Once I've done that, then I'll have to run them through the planer so I get a straight edge for my circular saw. That's what I'm doing now. And then that's all done, so then over to the circular saw to cut them to the final width. Job done. There was an awful lot of cutting going on, so I speeded it up to 32 times speed because I didn't want to bore you with it all. But I wanted you to have some idea of just how much was involved. I should have been wearing ear protection, I know, but I turned up the music to drown out the machine noises, so that would do it, wouldn't it? I then noticed that I'd forgotten to take the board widths off and had to trim them down by 36mm. Well, you live and learn, don't you? That's the idea behind all of this.
So there we go, that's all the sides cut, all the straps cut, so now all I need to do is drill and dowel them. Going to be using a Wolfcraft doweling jig that I bought, never used it before, so I'm going to go away, read the instructions and see if I can figure it out. Catch you in a bit. Having cut all my bits, this is the first box fully assembled. Did it with this. And I made another video about the Wolf doweling jig, my experiences with it first time round. Go ahead and watch that and see how I used it to actually construct this cabinet, which is going to be installed shortly. I'm going to make the others up now, and I'll include that as part of this video so you can see how I actually use this jig. But like I say, the detail of how the jig was actually used is in a separate video on this jig itself. The reason I'm going to show you the using of the jig for this is just to give you some idea of the assembly and how I set it up and did everything, you know. Okay, onwards.
I've increased the speed now to 64 times speed to shorten the video, of course. There's an awful lot of this being done. Just using and getting used to the Wolf jig really, which I found quite good, but since then I've found out what a pocket hole jig is, and for this project it would have probably been much better.
Well, I've drilled all the holes for my dowels. I'm getting very swift with it. The jig, what you need to remember is that when you're doing these kind of joints, if you're doing any mass work, the joints are handed if you haven't got the offsets even, which I hadn't. So you did diagonals on all the boards with the jig set up to one direction, and then one end of the rails, and then you reset the jig and you do the other diagonals on the boards and the other end of the rails. So now we're just going to try and put it all together and see what happens.
Well, finally at the assembly stage. I'm using Gorilla Glue. It has a similar spec to Type 1.3 and an open time of 30 minutes. I then pilot drilled and countersunk the holes and screwed, and then I put a squaring plate on to hold the whole thing square.
Okay, everything's drilled, and I've been having some problems matching up the faces on this edge, and what it's down to is that when I drill, because the jig the Wolf jig only allows me to select 16 or 20mm boards, and these are 18mm boards. The holes are offset and there's a narrower edge to the outside of the unit, so I need to make sure that when I dowel them and when I put them together, I get the thinner edge with the hole closer to this edge to the outside. As I've actually marked them all I need to do is keep the letter to the outside, which I hadn't realised before that, and I've actually made two others up before I realised what the problem was. But That's what I'm here for, to learn. So onwards. I'm going to put this one together and hopefully this one will be fine.
And this time, yes, they went together just fine. I didn't shoot a concluding video clip for this part of the presentation because I wasn't intending on splitting it into parts. I didn't realise how long it was going to end up being. So thanks for watching and hope to catch up with you in part 2. Look forward to hearing from you.